I wasn't sure what kind of turnout we'd get.
We're all leaning on our hands. Like,
Is your microphone turned on?
yes.
I hear the harmonicas, but I don't see them.
Yes. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, there they are.
Hey, we're good. I was just saying we're all leaning on our hands like,
Uh-huh. I thought we'd have more than 6 people.
We do.
We got
We've got
four
Don and
four times
us,
12.
Laura,
says
Lotampio, Walt Dahlgren,
Says there's 13.
Gail
Oh,
Martin, you.
okay.
Looks like Nancy Callahan struggling along with something.
Oh, well, let me expand my screen. My fault, sorry.
And then there's another one that's just got a phone number.
716.
Right, that's somebody, that person's,
107.
that guy's probably, what's the word they use? Zoom bombing us?
Really?
Okay, who are you? 716-485-1072?
That must be Joy. Joyce and Walter both on.
They're not talking. So who's that Laura?
Looks like there's no,
Looks
like
like
there's
Laura's
no
having some trouble
well,
connecting.
here's Walt, but Joyce has got a separate, she's got 2 things
Yeah.
going.
They must be trying to get connected so they can talk.
We see you, Walt.
Can't hear you though.
How was the turnout for the last meeting?
We met at the apiary. What do you think? Monica's, would you say there were 12 people maybe?
I was gonna say that. I don't have an exact count, but that's
Yeah, Gail was
10 or
there.
12.
Gail and Craig and Dennis and Laura and me and Rod and
Craig?
I don't think we
Walt.
finished 11 squares.
No.
And Gail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gail, you're muted if you wanted to talk.
No, I didn't want to talk, but yep, I was there.
Okay.
Walt was there. So we had quite a few for being an outdoor meeting. It was nice.
I thought it was great too.
Yeah.
Like, at least got to see somebody in the flesh, you know, rather than.
Yeah. That's it.
It was a nice evening. You're comfortable.
It was.
And the lemon squares were like, that was really good too.
No, isn't that awesome? Priscilla's it just knocks it out of the park every time.
Mhm.
Walt, if you can hear us, we can see you guys on 2 screens. He's pointing, but we can't hear you.
I think they can hear us though.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay. Yep. All right. That's good.
So why don't you write on a ledger and just put it up to the camera? That's weird. We had this issue before and then you somehow figured out how to talk.
I see Paul, Brian, and Kate are muted too. So if they want to participate, they need to unmute them with a little microphone down at the left-hand lower left.
Right.
You can't do it.
I know, it's probably was, well, anyway.
Well, I suppose.
Paul, do you see that little microphone down at the lower left-hand corner?
No.
No.
Take your cursor
go
down to
to
the
the-
bottom of the screen. And maybe it'll
Or-
pop up, a little bar.
You can also go to the box with your name in it, and up in the top right-hand corner, it will tell you mute or unmute.
Ooh, good one, Kate.
There you go. Oh, yeah,
Not
that's right. Go
mine.
to your- That's a good one to know. So you can go to
Doesn't
the
work.
you can go to your picture, your little box, and there's there'll be a mute and 3 dots also.
Not on mine.
Actually, you can rename yourself too.
Yes.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it gets a little weird. Kate just renamed herself. Kate and Dave. Hi, guys.
Right there.
Hello.
So
You
Paul,
learned something.
Brian, Kate, and Dave, and Nancy, you guys are unable to do video? Or is your house a wreck, a mess?
Yeah,
Yes, your house is a mess?
yes.
There it is.
Do you want to do video?
I don't care.
Sometimes it's nice to see faces.
I'm trying to do it. I just have to figure out now where.
And the only reason
Usually when you,
the only reason I say that is because I have a Zoom with 25 students and all but 2 are faceless and it bugs me. Sorry. There they are.
It's really not a wreck.
It's not a wreck.
No.
Not too bad.
you know, when you put your cursor on your box and that little mute thing comes up in the corner and the 3 dots, when you push the 3 dots, one of the options is stop video. So maybe if there is no video, one of the options would be to start video. Guessing?
Don says yes.
Well, should we get started? It's about, I don't know, 14 after or something like that.
This camera doesn't seem too good.
No.
So,
Might be how warm it is or how dark it is.
what I'm going to do, and I'm not being rude, is I'm going to mute everybody. And you will be able to unmute yourself, okay, by going down to the lower left-hand corner and clicking on the mute button. This will just avoid having 8 people trying to say one thing at one time. But we encourage discussion. I'm not trying to stifle conversation, okay? So Don has been gracious enough to continue acting as our secretary and minute taker. Is that true, Mr. Huber? Yes. Thank you very much. Rod is unable to join us, and apparently he's been preoccupied with his mom. She's down in Duke Center, PA, which is south and east of Olean. I've been through Duke Center once, and you're just gonna have to blink and you miss it. It's really a small little town in the hollers of PA. So he's been quite busy apparently, dealing with family things. So we have a bit of an agenda, which I will be happy to share. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to start off with announcements. Does anybody have anything they would like to announce in terms of, I don't know, seminars, online seminars, or births in the family, weddings? My daughter got a job. So she just graduated from Gannon in May, occupational therapy. So she's starting a new job on Monday. So I guess that's an announcement. And she got engaged. So there's a double announcement.
There's been some stuff posted by New York Bee Wellness. I wasn't prepared to do any announcements, but so if you go to New York Bee Wellness, there is something going on, and it may just be the survey that they currently have. I would assume that Ashbury Woods in Erie, they usually have some sort of a beekeeping extracting thing in the fall. I don't know if the COVID's gonna affect it or not. It may or may not. Ohio State University is doing, has a webinar, and you'll have to go look these up, because I'm not, like I said, I'm not prepared to report exactly when, but they have something to do with pollinators. So Ohio State University has a webinar, something to do with pollinators, whether it's honeybees or something else. And what?
I don't know, there's been kind of a, everything's, all the in-person events have been shut down. So I think the best way to track whatever's being done online or virtually is to just do some Googling and checking for places. New York Bee Wellness is a great source. Normally the Empire State Honey Producers has an event in the fall. I'm sure they're not doing
They're
it.
not, that's canceled.
So I guess it's kind of we're kind of in the wasteland of in-person events, and it's a matter of just tracking down whatever online events are available. And truthfully, I have not been informed about any of them. So if I had, I'd tell you.
What I'll do is, when I run into these things, I'll try to consolidate them into one email and maybe send out kind of an email of stuff that's going on as a kind of a follow-up to this.
Okay, thank you.
Over and out.
Anybody else have anything to share? Interesting things you're finding on the net? Okay. Let's move on then to the treasurer's report.
Okay, I finally got around to, I had a pile of checks from people that had joined. So if you're checked in clear, it's been deposited as of today. So we deposited $187 in checks. Some of it was honey money, some of it was dues. But at any rate, the bottom line is currently in our account, we have $3,159.97. And that included, that is after the expense of $10.35, so I could return membership cards and receipts from people who joined. And also $187 that we spent on 4 queens that we've installed, and Laura later will report on the queens.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. The Bloom report.
Dennis, sorry, could you repeat that total for me?
Okay, back online here. $3,159.97. And it actually agrees with the statement, the current statement too, which is, somewhat of a miracle in this world of COVID.
Okay, got all that done? Okay, thank you. Kelly had emailed a Bloom report, I think to everybody, maybe today. I just happened to go online before the meeting, but I just cut and pasted it into the agenda. Again, you guys can see that, is that right?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, so there you go. No real surprises here, I don't think. Would anybody like to add to that list?
I can't add to it. I would only comment that although those things are blooming, my general impression is that maybe because it's been dry, it's been, in my estimation, a pretty dry summer, that I'm seeing things like the knotweed are starting to dry up more quickly than I would have expected. And I have a concern that only today I smelled the goldenrod in the honey yard. I went out to work with bees yesterday, I guess it was, and I finally, got that goldenrod like whack, right? But I would be concerned that there's not been a lot of moisture and that there may not be as much nectar in these sources as there has been in the past. That would just be my thought.
I agree. It's been a very, very, very dry summer. A lot of rain has been real local too. I know, at least here in Randolph. We had 4/10 of an inch the other day, but that was the most rain we've had in weeks. I was at my apiary about 2 weeks ago, which is like 7 miles outside of town, and it poured like crazy there. We got nothing in Randolph. So yeah, seems kind of spotty from what I can tell. There's a big patch of knotweed near Steenberg where I get off of 86 on my way home. It's huge, and it's probably a little past peak, but it was a really beautiful, and is a real beautiful bloom. In Salamanca, near the old hospital, there's tons of goldenrod. I drove by that on Tuesday, and there's not hardly a blossom on it. Whether it bloomed earlier and is just was a little bit different in terms of the blooming time than the one that I saw in Steenberg, I don't know. So I've seen a lot of good blooming, and I've seen hardly any in other spots. So yeah, whether that's moisture related, I'm not sure. The goldenrod seems, from what I can tell driving into work, peaking, probably right around now. There's still some coming on, some that's already bloomed past peak, but seems like a good, from what I can tell, just visually. Who knows what the nectar looks like?
When I drive down to Warren, there are areas that are looking really lush and vibrant with the goldenrod, and there's other places that the goldenrod's starting to turn brown. So I do think it has to do with some of this local rain that we've been getting, very localized. And that's the same with the knotweed. There's some knotweed that is just vibrant white right now, and some of it's starting to turn kind of a dark cream color. So it's pretty well over, and it's not in those areas are not too far apart from one another either. It's driving between here and Warren, and it's just going through Sugar Grove, and it's just quite a difference. It's not a continuum, from one to the other. It's spotty all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how how the honey crop's going to be.
I don't know. Are other people smelling, smelling that kind of characteristic goldenrod honey right now?
The old socks stuff, gym socks, locker room.
I'm not. I agree with what everyone is saying. I think there's been very few flowers up here on the hill this year. And I thought that a couple weeks ago, I thought that my bees were super light for this time of year.
I think that might be a good reason for a little discussion later about maybe feeding.
I don't smell a dirty socket around our hives, but I smell honey. Very strong smell of honey. And we have stuff blooming everywhere, from knotweed, we call it bamboo, to all the flowers. Goldenrod is beautiful here right now. Ours seem to be bringing in the pollen.
Yeah, the stuff we smelled wasn't the dirty, the locker room sock thing that you normally associate with goldenrod. It's kind of a butterscotch smell. That was you
Today and yesterday?
yesterday anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't pungent the way sometimes goldenrod is, and you kind of are taken back by it. But it was, clearly there's a honey flow on right now. And the question for me is, how long will it last, and how substantial is it going to be? Is it going to be sufficient to get them the honey stores they need to get through the winter? I guess I'm going to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have 2 deeps on both hives and 2 supers, and the 1 super on both hives is full, and that will leave for the winter. I would hope that we won't have to feed too much.
Well, I would think that you're doing well if you're going to leave especially a super on it for the winter.
Yep, we've done that the last 2 years, left a full super on the hive, and then we put sugar on top, but it gets too hard to feed with the yellow jackets and the hornets and the...
Oh my God.
So Gail, do you assess the 2 deeps in terms of how much honey is in those 2 boxes?
As long as it's heavy. And we're not opening them up now. We're just pretty much watching the supers that they don't get too full.
The reason I ask that is because I have found over the last 45, 6 years that when I expect to find heavy deeps, both of them, That's not always the case.
Huh.
And I leave a super on as well. I've always done that. So it's usually 2 deeps and a medium.
Right.
And they've always come through with plenty of honey left over. But I used to think, well, why aren't my deeps heavier than hell, you know? And they're not. And I used to get worried about that.
Well,
And I guess I'm not as worried about that.
I'm not knowledgeable enough to worry yet. As long as the supers are full and they've got sugar extra to store, you know, that we dump on, I think so far we're doing good. And if the supers aren't full, we'll make sure that they haven't, you know, we'll add frames down in to make them full supers. But last time we looked, the ones that were going to stay are pretty good shape.
Mhm. Any other comments on the bloom report?
There's purple loosestrife in the swales if you like invasive species.
Well, knotweed is invasive too. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the apiary report. I guess Laura might have something to say, right?
I do. So, oh gosh, Bob, when was it? We got the queens from Jeff Berta in middle of August, maybe about the 20th. My notes are kind of goofy, but Rod and I have been going back pretty much weekly to check on things. We've gone through to make sure the queens were released and that they appear to be making progress. And so there's some good news and bad news. In spite of the best efforts of all of us and all of our good eyes making decisions about what were like splits at that point, there was a runaway queen that we introduced a Berta queen into a nuke essentially that we had set up that already had an existing queen. So one of the Berta queens was killed on emergence, but there's an existing queen that was the old queen, right? So other than that, they're making progress. I guess my concern in observing them is that they were fairly like late splits, and so they're small colonies, and we're probably going to have to examine that, keep an eye on them, and make decisions pretty quickly about whether to merge some of the colonies together, because I don't know that the splits that we made with the Berta queens are going to build up fast enough to be viable for the winter. So we have to get together and make some choices about that.
The original intention was for the assessment when we went through the apiaries, we had some queens that were laying. They were spotty. We thought we had a couple queenless colonies, but probably was there was just a dearth and they weren't laying because there were no eggs. But we also couldn't find the queens, and so we bought four Berta queens. And when we went to install them, everything had eggs and larvae. So the intention was to requeen anyway. And I think Laura and Rod has been through some of these colonies that we thought were the candidates to requeen and still can't find the queen. You know, which at this point in time, the probably the right thing to do is to pinch the old queen and install the Berta queen, the new queen, and that way that colony will get through winter, because the splits right now aren't going to make it.
Well, Bob and I and Walton, Craig, and we went through with the queens in their
Originally
cages, right, and decided, well, you've got nothing here is queenless. Let's see what we can do. So we've got colonies that are up and running. I don't think they're going to have time to build up sufficient populations and stores, no matter really what we do. So we're going to have to somehow make decisions about how to merge them. And
we need to. I think the proper thing to do is to take the young queen and put it in a colony, and for the winter, which is that's the standard practice anyway, of requeening in the fall.
Pinching the old queen.
But you'd have to get rid of the old queen, but you got to find the old queen, and that's been the problem right now. But so anyway, so we got what three colonies to assess.
Right.
So we have three colonies to choose to merge with a new queen. So
The three with new queens have to merge with something that had an old queen, and we have to make that awful decision about which, off with their heads, right?
Mhm.
Which ones are, or we can let them, put them together and let them figure it out. We could do that too.
We shouldn't probably do anything until after the fall flows over, right? Like say October 1, something like that.
That's only a couple weeks away.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But we don't want to do it in the next week or two, I don't think.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of honey stores up there, which is interesting. I mean, it's not, they're adequate for overwintering. They're not producing a lot of surplus honey, so I don't see if the club needs to plan to extract. You know, we can make a decision in a couple of weeks, but you know, one possibility is just leaving whatever supers are on over the winter, leaving it for the bees that are there. Since we can't get together and do an extracting event anyway, that might be the prudent thing to do.
Mhm.
You know, and the other thing too is, you know, if we merge these colonies, we're going to wind up with colonies with, you know, 3 deeps on them, on 3 of them anyway. And that's a good opportunity for the spring to do a split, early split. So we have some opportunities. It's not like a lost cause or anything.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, Laura and Dennis, for that report. Moving on to old business. I'm not exactly sure what that entails.
It's been on the agenda, and I don't know what all old business would be anymore.
We're all old. What's that good for?
I guess the old business is us. Yeah, all of us.
We need some new business is what we need. Um,
Well, I've got something for old business.
Okay.
Bob, what's going on with Tom Seeley? I know that would never really materialize, but is there any kind of an update on that?
None. I haven't communicated with him. There's been no change in that. I'm trying to remember what we decided. We were going to invite him to come. Was it next?
I don't remember.
Next
I
year,
don't-
right? We wanted him to come for the sesquicentennial, which would be 2020, correct?
Right.
But he said he was unable to commit until 2021 sometime.
Barry, hi,
So-
Barry.
So that's what I remember him saying. I can go back and read his emails, but given the COVID situation, I don't know that anybody's willing to predict any, visits, or we'd like to have him physically come to the club at some point, right? That was the goal.
I think so.
And so, we have to see kind of how maybe, I don't know, he might not want to commit until things are safe. I mean, I have no idea. I'm sorry, I can't answer your question or be more specific.
Kind of a rolled out follow-up. You know, Randy Allen has done some of these Zoom meetings type things. We're speaking on maybe some of his new research or on the new mic treatments he's been doing or some of that stuff. And he's done it for, I think, for New York Bee Wellness, and he also did it as a gathering, though, a couple of years ago for the Northwestern Pennsylvania Honey Producers Association in Erie. And would you like me to look into maybe if he would be interested in maybe for the next meeting or maybe 2 meetings from now, sometime in the nearest future, but having this meeting being a Randy Oliver presentation?
He would probably want to charge us something, right? I would assume.
What he's done with the other ones is he's accepted donations.
We're not hearing you, Dennis. I don't know if you need to move toward Laura a little bit.
Yeah, what he did with the other ones, he just accepted donations. He did the presentation for free, but he accepted donations, and he did very well with the donations. So I don't know, if we're only getting, half a dozen people here on a Zoom meeting, maybe that isn't going to work, but maybe it's worth looking into a little bit anyway.
Or coordinating with another club and seeing if we can get I mean, that's
That-
more logistics, but
That may be possible because the Western, what was it, the Erie, I guess it's, I think, I don't know if it's the Warren Beekeepers Association or Warren County
No,
Beekeepers
no, it was in
Association.
Northwest Pennsylvania.
No, 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 no,
Northwest-
no, no. Just the Beekeepers Association in Warren that Ken Rouse was part of. Anyway, there are some key people that are copied on all of our emails. So they would be a small group, but they would be a group that may be willing to participate. And they were also the group that hosted Marianne Fraser down in on the Yankee Bush Road down in near Chandler's Valley a couple of years ago. So they may be interested in in joining in on this too.
I also think if we had an agenda and a presenter, I think our turnout would be different than it is for a regular meeting.
yeah. And would we try to maybe do a Saturday thing versus a Thursday night thing? Or, of course, it depends on
Good.
lots of factors, his availability, and I'm just wondering if we get a better turnout if we did it on a weekend.
Maybe, yeah. The downside to this though is that after Randy's presentation in Erie, they had a little collection table at the exit, and everybody, the whole thing was free, so people were donating like crazy, because it was really well worth it in spite of some technical glitches. And here, somebody's going to have the, be willing to mail a check into somebody, or do something like that. So that may not be quite as successful as it was in Erie.
Oh,
Well, the club could, of course, provide a donation, depending.
Sure,
on-
there
absolutely.
you go.
No, absolutely.
That's
uh,
probably a great idea. We'll just commit to that and then have people make a donation to the club to offset it or whatever.
Would you like me to look into it?
I
It
think
doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be next meeting, but sometime.
I would agree. What does
Sure.
everyone else think? Craig?
Yes.
raised his hand.
What about Craig and Laura? Oh, Craig had something. Oh, was that just a hand up, a thumbs up?
I was clapping.
Oh, you're technically beyond me.
There's a button that says reactions, and I can either clap or what can I do here? I can clap or thumbs up.
Does everybody
You
see
did a-
that? You can
I don't know
react.
if people saw it with New York State Honeybee Wellness, but I don't know how many weeks ago, a month ago, maybe.
Yeah,
6
yeah.
weeks ago, Pat Bono had a program. Randy was the guest, and he talked about his most recent research with regard to Varroa monitoring techniques and what he's learned and what advice he has and how his thinking has progressed in terms of what the best techniques are. And I thought it was really valuable.
It was an excellent webinar, and it was also, it's posted on New York Bee Wellness on their website. So that with us crummy weather, in particular, like last Monday, if we get another one of those kind of days, might be something to do in an afternoon, but or an evening, but especially too since it's getting dark so early. But anyways, on New York Bee Wellness, there is a webinar from Randy Oliver. So it kind of might give you a little bit of a flavor of what we would be looking forward to if we do something with him.
He might even provide a potential list of topics, or if we as a club had some sense of what we'd like to hear to some extent. I don't know how much involved we want to get in that process, but right.
Hey, Bob,
Walt's trying to.
Bob, I see Joyce and Walt are trying to connect to audio. Is that something you need to enable?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
something must be going right, or they wouldn't be.
Walt's trying to do something here.
Yeah,
He's-
or they wouldn't be trying to connect. I should be connecting.
So it doesn't look like Walt's muted, but we can't hear.
Yeah, I don't know. He has been at the meeting where he's been able to communicate. So I don't know what's going on. So are we ready to move on to new business? Again, whatever that is. Any new topics? Well, topic of discussion is coming next, I guess. Can we move on to topic of discussion, or is there any new business?
Yeah, I guess probably the new business would have been the Randy Oliver stuff maybe, unless that somebody else has anything to bring up as far as maybe things we should be looking into or doing in the future here.
Right. But we talked about maybe, making some decisions on the apiary in the next few weeks, maybe before the October meeting, right?
Oh, for sure. Yes. And we need to do another mite treatment out there too. Maybe a vaporization, oxalic acid vaporization. So anybody that wants to participate in that, we're coming up to the point, if we're not going to pull honey supers, there's no foul in doing it at any time. And if we're going to merge some colonies, maybe we want to merge them and then do it. But at any rate, a vaporization could be done anytime. And if you wanted to do an oxalic acid dribble, that would be maybe later, but that would be near the end of September, early October. So
do you think we could do both an assessment and a combination, if we need to do that, and treatment all in one day?
What do you think? Expert Laura, expert Laura.
It depends on what we find, I guess. I mean, I guess I would think we need to do an inspection, figure out what we've got, and then plan a strategy. I see it as two events.
Yeah. And also you need to find the queens if we're going to merge too. And that seems to be problematic. And we've also had that problem here too. We'll talk about that later.
Do you think we should schedule like the first Saturday of October for an inspection?
I think that's a great idea.
I think it's too late.
Maybe, what's the date today? The 10th, 18th, 20, maybe the 20.
Let's do it in September. Yeah. A Saturday or Sunday in September. Near the end.
I don't have a calendar in front of me here.
Saturday 26, Sunday 27.
That sounds right.
Whatever
The couple.
Saturday or Sunday.
How about a Sunday afternoon, early afternoon?
Oh, Walt.
There you go, Walt.
Oh, Kate and Dave.
Okay, yeah.
The 27th.
Thank you for the calendar.
Well, you want it maybe the 20th, 19th or 20th. 19th is a Saturday, 20th is a Sunday, or we have the 26th and 27th. That may be getting a little late, but
okay. Well,
especially if we have troubles finding something,
How about the 20th primary date and the 27th as a rain date?
Works for me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That works.
Thanks,
for us.
Kate.
Any other input?
Okay, so we're going to plan for an apiary inspection for Sunday the 20th. Is that right? And the rain date will be a week from then, the 27th. Any particular time you want to shoot for? 1 p.m.?
Afternoon, assuming the weather's good, I would say after church or lunch,
Yeah,
whatever.
For the churchgoers.
1 o'clock.
For us heathens, it doesn't matter, but I think for the churchgoers, it may.
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock? Anybody have any opinion? I could do either one.
Walt says 1.
1 o'clock, Walt?
Walt says 1.
1.
Okay, 1 p.m.
Craig says 1.
So I'll send an email out and invite any and all members to come for an inspection that day. Okay, so we did have some new business. Good.
I think we can make it up.
Right. I guess the next bullet there, topic of discussion, is sort of an open forum, right? Whatever you guys would like to chat about.
Well, since everybody's jumping in, I'll jump in. We have had a couple of, maybe 2 interesting years here. Well, you know, we were about 55 hives 2 winters ago. They're going into the winter before this last winter. And we had, what, 70% loss?
We had a crazy loss.
Crazy loss. We come out with 15 hives
Yeah.
or something, whatever the numbers are. Okay, so we had all this extra equipment, all these extra deeps. We had deeps that were just loaded, in particular with pollen. So we put them in storage with our little storage thing. And we had some capped honey, but you know, we've done what we've always done with the unused equipment. You know, made sure it was, you know, if it dried out and all that kind of stuff. Made sure that we had sprayed it with that BT stuff for our wax moths and stuff, and we stored it. Well, we wound up getting bugs in it. And if I had thought I had Bob, I would have had it so we could post some pictures. We wound up with some pantry bugs. And is there a way you can post a picture off of Google Drive on the fly?
You mean here now?
Yeah.
Sure.
How do I do that? Tell me what I have to do, because these are pretty impressive.
So are these
Impressive, all right.
are these in the club's Google Drive?
No.
No. This would be mine. Do I have to send a link, or how would that work? Well, I don't even know if I have on Google Drive, actually. I probably don't.
If you have the pictures, you can send the pictures to me directly.
Send the picture.
All right, I'll do that in a minute.
Okay.
So while he's doing that, I'll keep talking. How's that work?
All right, so tell them what's going on.
You
Tell
send
them
the
what we did.
pictures.
I gotta get him.
All right. So we have had like bug problems like we have never had bug problems before. And in part it's because we had an excess, you know, we've had much, because of the dead outs, we had much more stored pollen frames, which we thought were of value. And we had frames with capped, you know, because of the dead outs, we had capped honey that was left that we were going to store. And all of it was sprayed with BT, and we thought we provided for it, but it was, you know, kept at ambient temperature. None of it was, you know, some of it was exposed to freezing, but not consistently. And we have had like bug problems like you can't believe. We are having trouble with, the first round was some kind of a pantry moth that got into the pollen, and just, there's these little beetles and larvae that just decimate the, you know, tear through all of the pollen that's stored, and they create all this kind of frass, but they don't destroy the wax. And then the next round has been, well, wax moths, which got ahead of us. And then we think we've got small hive beetles, which is also just like tearing up our, you know, whatever the stores we had of stored honey, which we'd had, you know, for more than a year, and it did fine. And suddenly we think small hive beetles have found their way into our world. And we are just beside ourselves trying to figure out how to not just protect our, you know, protect our wax, which is one thing, but the biggest issue is they're just a god-awful mess, and we can't seem to get ahead of it. So
I don't think we have small hive bees. Well, we're still open on this one. I think the honey has been, it's been, some of it's uncapped and it's hydroscopic, so it's getting wet, you know.
it looks slimy because it attracts moisture.
Mhm.
But
But these hot, go ahead.
What do your Cornell friends say about that?
well, when we first had our issues with this undiagnosed little beetle that was causing that little larva, and it was clearly going through the pollen because it was, you know, creating frass, but it wasn't destroying the wax. They said those were a pantry
beetles.
a pantry beetle.
We had 2 kinds of pantry beetles. One was the American pantry beetle, and I don't know what the other was. I sent you a couple of photos on Gmail, Bob. I don't know if that was the proper form. Bob, I had-
He's good looking.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Anyway.
getting a low bandwidth message on Laura and Dennis's screen. Is everybody else seeing that or no? No, it says low bandwidth, so we weren't catching everything you were saying the last.
Uh-oh.
We
Oh,
heard,
that's not good.
we
That's
heard
not good.
it just indicated a low bandwidth for some reason for the last minute or so.
Well, maybe it's because you're getting these photos, which are probably high-res photos or some stupid thing.
So you sent them to me?
I sent you 5 photos or so.
I guess
Okay.
my question is to anybody else, when you're in a situation to store either frames of capped honey that you might want to save to feed back to bees at some point, or frames that have pollen, which we've all been told, you know, to hang on to because they're going to be useful for nukes and blah, blah, blah. Like, how do you prevent the bugs from showing up and eating them alive? Barry, you gotta help me here. Do you have this problem? Uh-oh, can't hear you, Barry.
I don't store
Hey,
stuff.
hey. So how
Can
do
you
you, what do you, go ahead.
I don't store stuff.
Right.
Because you don't have it to store because you let them rob it out, or how's that work?
All my equipment stays full.
Yeah.
All I do is sell nukes. I don't extract honey.
So you don't have supers that are, you know, put in storage, and you don't have.
None.
Yeah.
Zero. I don't have that problem. I have small hive beetles. I always have those. I have commercial beekeepers within 5 miles of my house, 6 miles of my house. I think they're almost everywhere.
We've got some oddball beetles, but they're not small hive beetles this year. And we've had them off and on in the past. They don't seem to do anything with anything, but.
Right, yeah.
So
The small hive beetles don't do anything unless they have weak colonies.
So we had the problem last year, and it's a little bit of a problem this year with these pantry moths. But effectively, what they've done is they've the pollen is all gone, so there's nothing for them to chow down on. But you know, we have always treated all of our frames that were in storage, in particular brood frames, with that B401, that certain or that it's a BT product. The subspecies is Awe, and it's a product that you can spray on, harmless to humans. You spray it on the combs, and it's a Bacillus, thuringiensis. I can't pronounce it.
I can't pronounce it.
Thuringiensis or something, and it's an organic a bacteria that when the larva from a wax moth eats it, there you go. That's the American pantry beetle. Let's go back to this. We'll come back to my other thing. So this was the American pantry beetle. There were some of those, but they weren't in the dominant ones. There were some other beetles that were very small, and Bob's got a couple pictures of those. Yeah, those little black beetles, they were running all over the place. And there was just frass everywhere, where they were taking the pollen out of the cells, and who knows what they were doing. We stacked up the supers and couldn't figure out how to get rid of them. Now, when we store stuff in the past, we've always put them on something that excluded mice. So we've always stored them with either a queen excluder or something like that on the bottom and on the top. Well, when we moved to that new building, and since we're moving everything on pallets, we put pallets with 1/4 inch hardware cloth on the bottom of it, and stored all our stuff on top of the hardware cloth, and then put a queen excluder on top of the stacks, so it would exclude mice. That was the purpose. And what happened is, well, it doesn't exclude beetles, right? So we wound up with these things. We brought them home, and we tried to do all sorts of stuff to get rid of these beetles, and including putting them on a inverted outer cover, and stacking them up and putting paramoth crystals on it, and putting the lid back on it. And the paramoth crystals, which are good for, it's a paradichlorobenzene that's good for wax moths, did nothing to curb these guys.
You can't see them here, but these beetles produce little larvae that are just like
Yeah, little
Oh
teeny
my
worms,
God.
just like larvae, like any beetle has a larva,
Like,
Anyway, so we,
Yeah, yeah.
we just, I guess we just kind of let this one burn itself out. We figured eventually they're going to eat themselves out of house and home and be done. And which is essentially what happened. But they kind of left a mess. They didn't really mess up the comb, but they kind of left kind of a ratty looking comb with, half-eaten pollen in it and stuff.
yeah.
So that was last year. So this year, we figured that was done. So we put all our stuff back in storage on top of this a quarter inch mesh screen on the bottom to keep the mice out. Queen excluder on top to keep the mice out because that was easy. We had extras. And now, and all of our frames that we've stored have been treated with that BT product. So if a wax moth larva starts to eat, it'll burn itself out. It'll kill itself. Well, what happened this year is we had so many wax moths, and they weren't the greater wax moths, the big ones. They were the lesser wax moths, the small ones that could get through the stuff. We had wax moths all over the place, and they would lay their eggs. The eggs would eat a couple, would do about an inch worth of burrowing through the cells, and they would die. But there was a constant supply of wax moth larvae because they were, because the wax moths could get in there and constantly lay. They could get through that quarter-inch hardware cloth. They could get through a queen excluder. The greater wax moth, the bigger ones, couldn't do it. So we had that whole thing to do with. So we finally put them on a pallet on a piece of plastic, stacked them up, put some paramoth on it, and left them for 2 weeks, and it killed all the moths. So we've moved them back inside now. So we're, but we've had some real storage issues with procedures we used when we used to store them here that never had a problem. But we never had, we probably had, we have
Yeah, because of the deaths, we probably have,
well, we have let's see, 15 from 50. We had 60, so we would have had enough setup for 60 hives.
Right.
And we have what? We have 20,
deep,
so we've got,
80 deep and
we got 80
right.
deep stored right now. And we never had that problem before. So
Wow.
it's kind of an interesting little set of situations. So now we're back with a few pantry beetles, but not a ton. And what we've done is I've started screening the pallets with window screen. And I'm going to make window screen covers that'll keep them out. And eventually I figure whatever's in there, they'll reach the end of their life and there won't be anything that can get back in. And so we'll be back good. But anyway, it's been a whole 2-year process kind of, or 2 summer process anyway.
I think Barry's got the answer, which you just
Don't store anything.
don't store.
And we didn't have the problem because we never stored anything but a couple deeps, and some supers. Honey
Well,
supers.
Anybody would have tried to salvage all this great pollen and kept
Right.
honey for
Right.
future
Right.
use, but little did you know that it was going to create such havoc.
Well,
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened. And then we had some honey, some supers that were really heavy with honey. We thought we'd store them and put them with our nukes, and we did that with a few of them. But the ones that were left, they're getting slimy now. But I don't think it's hive beetle. Because we have these pantry beetles, but we don't have small hive beetle. But I think, unless it's the pantry beetles, but I think some of them were uncapped, and honey's hydroscopic, so it's drawing moisture out of the air, and it's getting a little bit thinner and oozy.
Oh my God, there's my friend.
That's the American hive beetle right there.
No, pantry beetle.
American pantry beetle. Yes.
And these are the ones that I found some on like our floor of the kitchen or around the house once in a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they show up in your pantries, like eating. I think they go for like protein,
And
like
flour
and stuff.
Those are common. I guess at one time they were common in every house, every kitchen, every pantry in the United States. They were,
Huh.
Before you started sealing foods, better packaging with food and stuff. They were a pretty common thing, and thank God we haven't wound up, with our fried pasta and stuff. But
Hey, Rick.
but those other little beetles are also a pantry beetle if you go to ID them.
That little skinny guy.
The little small ones, but I can't remember exactly what they're called. There's probably a clearer picture. I tried catching them because they were pretty runny. They were traveling all over the place.
Yeah.
So we're becoming experts in bugs. that like
Yeah.
the bugs that you don't want in your equipment. It is such a mess, and it's been such a hassle to try to keep up and clean up and get ahead of them. And I think my takeaway, I said to Dennis, I don't know, whenever, as we were last night cursing about the situation, I said, you know, that's it. I'm never, ever, ever, when somebody tells me to save, you know, a
That's a
frame of,
good picture, Bob.
save
That
a,
one's,
save a frame of pollen because you're gonna need it for something, unless you can put it in your freezer, I would tell people, don't save it. You feed it back to the bees, put it on the bees. If you've got capped honey, unless you can freeze it, feed it back to the bees or let them rob it out. Just don't try to store stuff because
Yeah.
eventually the bugs will find you.
But Laura,
And I don't know what the remedy for these little beetles are, these pantry beetles, because
you don't want to spray your frames with an insecticide. And if something like Paramount crystals doesn't work, I think the only remedy would be to screen the stack off so they eventually die off, but they're constantly reproducing, right? Because, they'll lay eggs, you get a larva and the adult dies and you have another generation coming. So you're not adding anything to it, but you're not taking anything away. You almost have a little self-sustaining ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the remedy is, and that's going to be a posting for BL here at sometime in the future. But it can't be a unique situation to us. I mean, it's got to happen with anybody that has large volumes of brood boxes to store.
Interesting.
But anyway, it's just a lesson learned for everybody here, just to keep your eye open.
Yeah. Thank you. Gail, were you going to say something?
well, I was going to ask Laura, what do you do in your house when you have pantry bugs? A very simple, you put bay leaves in your cupboards. That's
Oh, you know what? We haven't had that situation here, but that's a great idea. Maybe throw bay leaves in.
When you stack up your supers or your deeps, they're not that expensive. Throw some bay leaves in the screen.
Great idea. Can't hurt.
That just repels them, not kills them, right?
Well, when you have them in your cupboard, you don't have pantry bugs in your cupboard, so it must repel them pretty good.
Repels them.
Yeah.
So that's preferable. I'd rather not do anything that's toxic.
So I guess you need to do it before we get them, right?
Right.
Well, I wonder if it would drive them out. That's an interesting question there too.
I wonder if it wouldn't drive them out. I would bet that it would.
We might try that. That's because we've got another stack that we're dealing with here. But
So if you can't find bay leaves at Wegmans, you'll know what happened.
You have a big box of them.
if Walmart sold out of bay leaves.
Right. I would try it.
That's a great idea. That's great.
Not to change the subject, but when you talked about not being able to find bay leaves at Wegmans or Walmart, I'm having a hell of a time finding canned lids, jars. Everybody sold out of canned.
You're not going to find them.
No.
Nope. You're not going to be able to buy lids, and very seldom do you ever see jars. Everybody has bought out.
Right.
We bought some another pallet of jars, 2 months ago, month and a half ago.
The jars that we sell our honey in.
And when we bought them, we said something about, I heard there was going to be a run on glass jars because of COVID stuff. And we bought them from Wixon out near, it's over near Cannondale somewhere. Dundee. They're in Dundee, New York. Anyway, and he said, we have plenty of glass. He said, but the problem now is because of all of the beer consumption that's happened because of the COVID, there's an aluminum shortage.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't get metal lids for our jars anymore. So now the next thing that they were going to have problems with is metal lids for their jars, which kind of ties in. I know the canning jars are steel, the lids on them are enamelized steel, but still goes back to this whole thing now, unintended consequences of one thing or another.
Yeah.
But I didn't know jars were now in short supply.
Yeah, not many people.
But I've heard lids were.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
What if you need queen line jars?
Oh, you
We
know
have a
what?
couple dozen boxes for sale.
Actually, we do have queen line jars, the pound and half pound, and that's not a commercial advertising, but yes, we do.
It is, it is.
And actually, what the guy at Wixon said was interesting, because what he said was that plastic is going to be easy. You know, he can fulfill orders for plastic still. That was a few weeks ago. He said glass jars are going to be hard. Those orders will be hard to fill. Excepting for the ones that Dennis said, well, what about our Muth jars, which is that, you know, antique reproduction? He said, we don't have any trouble. Those are like so consumer unfriendly. Nobody wants those jars. You're going to have plenty of them, so don't worry about it. So, okay, whatever.
So you have what, you would say you have queen line jars?
Queen line is the classic, it's glass.
It's a classic little skep jar, you
Oh,
know.
wait, I got
Oh,
one.
she's got, oh, of course we have one here. These are, I don't think they're the actual queen line. I think these are the queen line type jars that maybe Brushy Mountain or somebody sold at one time.
Oh, yeah.
But we probably got 20 cases or so. We don't use them.
They're glass?
Well, so that's the, you know, it's this old fashioned like queen line glass jar.
Yeah.
This one has a
Metal top.
metal top.
All right.
Has the ridges on the shoulders. It's a pretty standard.
I think we probably have maybe 20 cases of each or something.
Maybe
They were left over from a while ago.
So are you selling those?
Oh yeah, yes. We don't use them.
So what are you charging?
I have no idea. I have to look it up.
Okay.
Whatever we paid for them, you know, whatever the retail price was in the Brushy Mountain catalog when we bought them, that's what we're selling them for.
Okay.
So
Several years ago.
yeah, a couple of years ago. So before Brushy Mountain went out of business. So if you're interested, just email us and I'll tell you what they are.
Okay. How
Pounds
about-
and half pounds.
How about other topics of conversation?
Here we
have
go.
a message.
Who
takes bees from houses? Who takes bees from houses? Says Walt.
Walt wants to know who's doing what? Cutouts, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Right.
And we actually have been getting some calls on people that are calling for cutouts too. I think we've been sending them to either Rod and Kevin or Barry.
Barry, you doing cutouts?
Not this time of year. It's too late in the year.
Well, you can't. What do you get? You know, what do you get out of it?
I charge $500.
Yeah. I think Kevin and Rod are charging something in that neighborhood too. So it's just a lot of work.
Yeah.
Agreed.
The other issue is, you know, as you know, Kelly said in his little post, that people this time of year are calling about yellow jackets. So you have to be really cautious because you can run around looking at stuff and it's really not honeybees at all.
And you know, somehow Cornell's got our name, so we wind up getting a lot of phone calls on people that have either swarms or extractions. And we don't do either one of those anymore. So we send them on to whoever we know is, you know, in their neighborhood. But one of the things we do is ask them for a photo. If they say and somebody was recently had bees on their foundation wall, and maybe Barry, maybe that went to you eventually. But you know, bees in the foundation wall, that sure doesn't sound like honeybees. It could be, but we always ask for a photo. It's just because you can't just be driving around the county for, you know, shits and giggles, right? Was that eventually, is that something you looked at?
I didn't look at it. They didn't want to pay anything to have it done.
Oh yeah. You know, I tell people too. I said if you don't have, one of the first things I say is if people may charge you, people may not, whatever. But if you don't have them taken out, you know, you're going to wind up with fermenting honey, unripened honey in your wall. You're going to have stuff running around. You're going to be collecting vermin. You're going to have ants. You're going to have all sorts of stuff. And then the next thing so I said, you really need to get this stuff removed. And then the next thing I ask them, have you tried to spray them? And they almost always say yes. And I say, well, that's good to know because I'll tell the people that I'm referring it to that they may have been sprayed, and they probably won't come see you.
You didn't, you might as well just finish the job.
Yeah, and the people go, well, we sprayed them back in, May, and it didn't work. Now it's September, but.
Well, that explains the killer bee issue we have.
Oh, my God. I don't know. So, yeah. So Walt, does that answer your question? There are a few people who are available, in the right time of year. I don't know, Walt, if that answers your question in terms of who's taking bees out. I think Barry does. Rod does. Kevin.
Yeah, Walt, are you still doing it?
No, I don't think so.
Well, it looked like he said yes.
He's writing. We're gonna get a message.
Well, we talked.
Maybe the easy ones.
I don't think he's doing it anymore.
Well, let's see what he says here.
Limited.
All right, we'll make sure that we get, the easy stuff to you. But
Yeah, he doesn't. I remember Walt saying he doesn't do ladders. Like, no more ladders, right? If you get something you can reach from the ground. I absolutely get that part.
now we're going to have to, have Nancy give us a little bit of a tutorial on how to change the background and then have your hair blow in the wind. I like that. I knew it could be done, but I haven't seen it
It's because
done
I'm
yet.
actually flying right now. I'm orbiting the Earth.
I love it.
I like it. That's good.
I
knew
have
it
no
could be done.
idea.
I don't know how to do it.
I don't either. I don't know how I got it.
It's great though.
I think you're over France.
Anyway.
Hey Rick, how are your bees doing? Do you have nearby bees?
No, I actually, due to the whole pandemic and everything else that was going on, the packages that I had ordered, I'm actually in Rochester right now, and the packages that I had ordered, I couldn't go pick them up, and thankfully another beekeeper nearby needed them. So I was putting in, in 3 months, I worked over 6 months worth, of time. I was putting in double time. So I had no time to get everything set up and worked at. The one hive I had, I gave away, because I just knew I wasn't gonna be able to do anything with it. So I'm living vicariously through you all. That's why I'm sitting in here and listening to this and seeing how things are going.
Thank you. Don't give up.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to. Next year for sure.
Well, I want to say I hope Como is still your hero, and I don't want you to comment.
Stop.
I mean, business and politics. We're allowed to talk about those two things here, right?
Okay.
But we haven't heard from Laura Latempio. So Laura, what's going on with your bees?
My bees are doing good. I am up to 41 colonies again, and they're building up nice. I did have a little small hive beetle in some of them. So I put some traps in there, little plastic ones with the oil. That seems to work pretty good. They're real cheap, and the bees will drive them right into the trap and takes care of the problem. But I didn't have a problem with them till like probably a few weeks ago. So it was like they came out all of a sudden. But not all my hives, so that's good.
That's great.
I did see a lot of, it was strange. I saw a lot of bumblebees trying to get in my hives this year. Is that normal?
I saw that as well. I don't know that it caused any problems. Again, my apiary is not in the backyard anymore. I've got to travel a ways to go there, so I don't get to my hives as much as I'd like to. But it seems like there was a lot of bumblebees this year and last year in general, which is a good thing.
Yeah, but
I've noticed a lot.
I've been,
just the bumblebees. As I'm around the neighborhood, I've noticed it. So this is true.
Mhm.
I haven't
I've
seen
had,
bumblebees trying to get into the hives, but there's certainly a lot of yellow jackets. Like, this is like, crazy yellow jacket time. And the ball-faced hornets. Anything that's, any of our equipment that's out and exposed or frames we leave out, the yellow jackets and the ball-faced hornets are all over it.
We must have enough of a honey flow that the bees are going somewhere else because they're not robbing. But yellow jackets are by far the majority of the bees that have been in the stuff that we've picked up. They're on.
Mhm.
But just going back to the hive beetle stuff. We went to those honeybee wellness workshops here, but geez, a long time ago now.
8 years ago, something.
We had hives for everybody to inspect and stuff, and every hive we opened up, Day was about the same latitude as we are, right?
Maybe not the same climate, but and every hive we opened up had a small hive beetle scurrying all over the place, the bottom board, inner covers, and here in Chautauqua County, we don't have any, or not very much. And I tried to do a survey of the distribution of small hive beetles in New York State, kind of an informal survey, and I didn't get very far with it. But one of the things that Peter Borst had, and I don't know if you know him, he does a lot of posting on BL, but he also works at he works at Cornell University. He was at one time part of Dice Labs, but
And he was a bee inspector.
and was a bee inspector. He said it's essentially 50 miles, or maybe it's 25 miles, north and south of the thruway that you have this distribution of small hive beetles because of migratory beekeepers. But that probably now is true, the same distance north and south of 86, So you get this little narrow corridors where these small hive beetles seem to, well, whether they prosper or whether they're just constantly being reinfected. But in Canandaigua, they had gravel ground too, and they seem to reproduce there. Whereas here, we have had small hive beetle that never survived a winter.
But our soil is very clay. It's
It's a Chautauqua County clay soil here. So it's just becoming kind of an interesting thing, though. Once again, it would be interesting to see kind of what the distribution of small hive beetle is. Not necessarily buying, when you get it, like Laura, if you buy a package of bees, you may have small hive beetle when you get it. But what about the next year? Does that same colony have small hive beetle? It's would be kind of an interesting informal, maybe a club survey to do to see what's going on with small hive beetle in the area.
Yeah, I agree. So you're saying they're getting shed presumably from the commercial beekeepers as they're transporting along the highway?
Well, that's what Peter Borst had implied.
Yeah.
So Barry just said that, he's got commercial people within, stone's throw of him that may be introduced.
Well, Barry's got
Bob Brockman, and you got Merrimack Valley, right?
No, well,
Dave Arter.
Dave
Dave
Arter.
Arter too, yeah. Dave Arter goes to Florida and Louisiana in the winter. Merrimack Valley and then they're in Little Valley. They're Louisiana, and come back up through here. They have something in East Otto, and then they go to not Massachusetts.
Where's Massachusetts?
Massachusetts, and then Bob Brockman, who's got his the Russian bee breeding project in a Little Valley, but he also takes hives down. I think he takes them to Georgia, and for some hives, so he can build up his numbers in the wintertime and then brings them back. So so there is this transmission, this mobilization or whatever you want to call it, of moving hives. And if you move hives, you move hive beetles too. Even if they're certified hive beetle free, I would think that they're like Varroa. They're there. You don't, right? Barry, you've had yours certified for what? For hive beetle or Varroa?
The inspectors check for Varroa.
Right, but they don't inspect every colony, right? They inspect a representative sample. So that's what they do with these migratory people. They check a representative sample, and if an errant one has hive beetle, it comes along with the rest.
Yeah, in the spring I don't have them. later in the year they build up. So this time of year I do have a few here and there. You open up a hive and there's, maybe the most will be like a half dozen in some of the hives. They usually have them cornered on top of a frame or something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I've never had a problem with them.
Well, I don't think they reproduce, and like the hive beetles, I don't think they reproduce enough to make to be a problem around here between the winter and our soil,
Well, it would
Right.
be it's a problem if you don't process honey. It's really an issue for honey producers if they leave honey and don't process it right away. Then you end up with larvae that mess up your honey
They
production.
slime your honey and the honey gets ruined.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the pollen attracts them more than anything, the protein.
Anyway, bugs and bugs and bugs. Like that's what we're all about, right?
Lots of bugs.
Lots of bugs.
Why are the bugs infecting our bugs, right? Anyway,
How about other comments, topics you'd like to bring up? Anybody?
Not too much else. We're still doing the Cornell. Cornell's going to come back in a couple of weeks and do samples from our bees again. I guess the good news, one of the results we got from last year's, it took a while for them to process it, was that they reported they took samples of our wax, our oldest, funkiest, most like crappy, ugly, black wax from our colonies last year and took a long time to sample it. But the result was that there was very little any kind of pesticide or contaminant toxins in it, which was good. And I think that in some ways, not just about us, I think it really represents probably pretty much Chautauqua County, that our bees are probably not exposed and bringing back the kinds of toxins that, unless it's something that we put in the colonies ourselves, the bees are not bringing home a lot of toxins from our environment.
right? There was no coumaphos, there was none of the fluvalinate, none of the beekeeper applied chemicals.
Because we don't do that. But secondly, there was none of the
There were no neonics, or maybe just a trace amount of something. I can't remember now.
It was minimal, and it was like,
It was really really low.
really low toxicity. And this was stuff that was probably, I don't know, 6. It was old. It was like the worst of the worst black.
It was the oldest of the old we
It was
had.
the old black
Yeah.
crap that they,
So-
took and they tested. So I guess I share that because I don't think it's just because of us. I guess I would share that because if your colonies are someplace like our colonies are, and you're not applying fluvalinate and coumaphos and all that stuff, I guess I could share that probably your wax is not particularly toxic.
Well, that would be a very interesting study. I hope they come out with something, surveying beekeepers from throughout New York State, because it may lend credence to the fact that maybe we don't need to rotate our frames every 3 or 4 years, like we maybe thought we did because of that.
If you talk to Tom Seeley says he never rotates his frames, ever. And he may manage his colonies differently than he's a researcher too, so I don't know what he does, but he doesn't rotate his frames. But I don't, I'm gonna wait for Laura to get back here. But I don't know how you participate in this program with Cornell. Laura can maybe expound on that. Maybe you have to meet some sort of criteria. But oh, here she is. But that would be something that would be a very good thing. If the participation is at least it's free, but there may be some criteria of how you qualify. But in the process, though, if you qualify and you want to do some testing and have somebody muck around in your bees twice a year in a couple colonies, it's probably an interesting thing to do, you know,
I,
as long as they have the resources to do it.
you know, who wouldn't take advantage of world-renowned researchers to provide guidance, you know, and you guys being small business folks, you appreciate, that's why you did it, right? Plus you wanted to understand more. Wonderful opportunities. We should take advantage of those.
So the deal was that they are, the Cornell Tech team is funded through the pollinator protection money that was distributed federally to each state.
Probably through the Obama
Right,
stuff.
here's the Obama, you know, the
Okay.
pollinator protection funds. Every state got a lump sum of money and they had to decide how they were going to use that. And in New York State, one of the projects was this Cornell Cooperative Extension, what they call tech transfer team. And their purpose is to help beekeepers evaluate what's going on, provide practices, but it's
Education.
hands-on technical support. So they are selecting, I don't know what their numbers are exactly, but they work with commercial people, they work with sideliners, and they work with backyard beekeepers. And at the time that the word went out, they were looking for some new participants a couple of years ago. They were interested in a sideliner. And that was, we qualified at that point, because at that point we had more than 50 colonies. And I guess we, you know, they have a regional distribution. So they wanted to find people from all over the state. And here we are out here in the boonies, and they selected us. So the only qualification was that I was willing to answer some questions about our beekeeping practices, what our, you know, what we do, what our goals are. I agreed to have them come and take samples twice a year for up to 3 years, and it's up to us. But up to 3 years, they can come and take samples twice a year of our bees, and they're looking for varroa mites, nosema. They inspect, make visual inspections for things like EFB and AFB, and they take a wax sample and they process it. And we told them, I had to agree that if they were going to come and if they found AFB, American fall brood, that I agreed that they would do what has to be done, which is that they were going to burn the place down. Right?
Colony.
Right? That one, and maybe the whole apiary.
Whatever's infected.
Right. So there were some, you know, I had to agree to those things. And the flip side is that they come twice a year. They come in June and they come in September. They've identified 4 colonies that they sample repeatedly, the same colonies repeatedly. They do it on their own, but I'm there to observe, and they teach me as we go. But they're basically looking for the colony strength. They make an assessment of colony strength. They pull frames out and they look very, very, very closely at the anything that looks like a brood disease. And I've learned a lot, because, you know, when they look at brood diseases, I mean, they are like nose to the frame, examining what they see, and have pointed out things to me that I had kind of blown by in the past.
Parasitic mice syndrome in particular.
Right, or EFB, you know, which,
Well,
if there's a couple of cells of EFB, you don't necessarily know it, but you don't necessarily notice it, but you ought to identify it. And so anyway, it's been very valuable. I mean, it's been really a valuable experience and for us. And the other piece of it was they have oh my God, he's called an agricultural economist. And the other piece was to look at our business practice. And, you know, we sat down and shared our books, basically, you know, what we do, what we own, what our expenses are, what we hope to do. And, you know, he's put together a model, you know, a plan for improving a business practice that, you know, that's really correlated with best practices for honeybee management. So overall, it's been a great experience. But I guess my point is that there will be a window of opportunity for anybody in the area to do this. I mean, at some point in time, they're gonna be looking for another, sideliners like Laura. You know, Laura's got, you know, you're talking about having 50 colonies. You considered a sideliner. There'll be backyard beekeepers. They're looking for people from all over the state. It's just a matter of keeping our eyes open. And if I can, I'll share what information I have.
It's been a good practice. It just, you know, they have been very good about you know, about informing, you know, about the educational process of it. You know, it's not done on any kind of a what am I trying to say here? You know, that if you're a sideliner or a hobbyist, that you're less you're
There's no
a
judgment
lesser
about who you
beekeeper.
are.
Yeah, you're not as much of a beekeeper as a commercial guy, because you know, most of the beekeepers in New York State are either hobbyists or sideliners. So it's a good program, and it's been a good learning experience. And with this, we haven't quite got done with all the business model stuff of it, but you know, if you're selling honey, you know, if you're selling honey, you know, you're crazy not to report it as income, and that's my opinion anyway. I know that there's a, you know, a schedule you have to fill out, you know, on you know, Schedule A or Schedule F, but you get to deduct some of this stuff too, you know, and you know, as long as it's not just 1 or 2 colonies of the hobby. If you really mean to make some money on selling honey, well, you know, then it's worth doing. It's just but if you know, if you're just doing it as a hobby and just selling a couple bottles of honey, that's the different story. But you know, but anyway, it's some things to consider, I guess.
Yeah, they're just opportunities for me. For me, it's just opportunities to learn.
Oh, lots of
And,
educational opportunities, like for nothing too. They're just all over the place.
And there's just a wee bit of a spin-off, and we'll share with you what happens with this. But there's a graduate student at Cornell that kind of was piggybacked on this, and she's doing some kind of a virus study, and asked if, you know, she could come and sample bees, and she's comparing viruses with managed bees to feral bees. So she's going to come, I don't know how this works. Well, I'll let you know. She's going to come out, she's going to take some of our bees, and she's setting up traps on, I don't know how she's doing it, setting up traps to collect feral bees or whatever. And she's going to, I don't know. I'll let you know. I'm on board. We're just starting this.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 60 species or plus, maybe 300 species of wild bees in New York State. It's unbelievable, the number.
So anyway, she's going to be out here next week, and then in two weeks later, she's setting up traps to collect bees on wildflowers and coming back, whatever it is. I'm happy to share whatever we learn.
Okay.
It's just
neat.
It's going to be interesting.
The other part is there's all these opportunities available. You know, if you know, we have tried to make sure we post them, and I don't know if anybody ever follows up with it, but there's a lot of opportunities available that, you know, for educational stuff, to have people come visit you for nothing. You know, you're worried they're going to kill your hives because you have AFB, American Fallbird. Well, sorry, you know, I don't know. That's your problem, or that's your call, I guess I should say. But you know, but in general, that's not an issue, and just there's all sorts of educational stuff out there that's just there for the taking. It's just amazing. You have to get in the network, and you have to talk to her.
Well, I'll start posting it. And I don't know. For example, if Cornell, I don't know what their queue looks like. I don't know, you know, how many people there at this point, what they're looking for. But we're in the second year, and we can only do this for 3 years. So, you know, I know for sure that sometime coming up here, we're going to rotate out as a Western New York facility, and they're going to be looking for somebody in Western New York.
And maybe the Chautauqua County beekeepers, you know, maybe that's something that.
Oh, I don't know. I think they'll look at individuals. They're looking at businesses.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not looking at associations.
Organizations.
No.
Okay, all right.
I would think if anybody's interested, you could probably go to the Cornell Cooperative Extension site and Googling and do a little research and send an email and find out an answer in about a day or two.
Yeah, just ask.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I got to go back to, to Nancy. You know, has anybody watched the video or the movie? What was it called? Gravity. Gravity. Has anybody watched that movie? It's about a
Long time
person
ago.
in space orbit and the survival thing and stuff called Gravity. It's like this enormously incredible, on the edge of your seat type movie. And we watched it on TV, on YouTube or something. I don't know.
You guys have seen this. It's about the woman who's an astronaut. I can't remember.
Sandra
the-
Bullock.
And the some debris comes around and shreds their space shuttle or something.
You
they have to
nailed
go-
it. That's me.
And that's it. You can remind me of I'm waiting for you to grab a fire extinguisher so you can go from one spaceship to another. Gravity. When you get bored this winter, Gravity. It's like an incredible. And I don't ever watch shit on TV. So
Well, it's a movie. We went to see it.
yeah.
On that note, I'm going to suggest we call it adjournment to our meeting,
Okay.
unless there are other super pressing topics.
Nope. Make a motion, we close. I have canning left to do tonight.
Oh, God.
Good job, Gail.
Okay. So
Thank you for
Yeah,
listening.
the 20th.
I'll send an email out to the club regarding the September 20th APR inspection with the rain date for the 27th, 1 p.m.
Hey, one last thing. I just want to, I want to thank everybody that's participating tonight and really thank everybody that has paid their dues this year, for holding this organization together financially through this real mess, I mean, there was some commitment, a lot of people are getting almost nothing out of this. If they don't participate in this little thing or go to the B yard the few times we go, they get nothing out of it, but they're still holding our organization together as a group. And I would like to have maybe the minutes to reflect that, Don. I think it's just once again, it's just a wonderful thing that that we're all in it together. We're all beekeepers,
Yep.
We're maintaining the 150-year tradition.
There we go.
Cheers.
Good night, all.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for
Thanks,
coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.